They didn't insult me loudly. They didn't throw my clothes outside. They didn't even argue. My daughter simply stood in my doorway and told me to pack a bag because her in-laws were coming, and there wasn't space for me anymore. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. You don't have to be hated to be removed. You just have to become inconvenient. 12 hours later, their business began to collapse. Not because I shouted, not because I threatened, but because I stopped protecting them. The afternoon before her in-laws arrived, I was folding laundry on the edge of my bed when Claire appeared in the doorway. Her face looked composed, almost practiced. She didn't greet me. She didn't sit down. She just said, "Mom, pack your things. You'll stay at a hotel tonight." I asked where I was supposed to sleep tomorrow. She avoided my eyes and said it was only temporary, that Benjamin's parents shouldn't feel uncomfortable. The word uncomfortable stayed in the air like something poisonous. I had lived in that house for years. I had paid for most of it. But suddenly my presence had become a problem that needed relocation. Benjamin joined the conversation without raising his voice. He said I didn't contribute anymore and that my staying would create awkwardness. His mother, Evelyn, walked into my room as if she were inspecting property she already owned. She opened drawers. She commented on the smell. She suggested that people at my age should know when to step aside. There is a very specific kind of humiliation that doesn't scream. It settles quietly into your chest and makes you feel smaller than the furniture around you. I stood there holding my grandson's sock, realizing that no one was waiting for my answer. The decision had already been made. I was not part of the conversation. I was the obstacle being removed from it. What they never understood about me is that I remember details. I remember numbers. I remember signatures. When Benjamin discussed business, his confidence always ran slightly ahead of accuracy. Expenses that didn't align. Payments that arrived too conveniently. Contracts that looked polished but felt rushed. I noticed, but I stayed silent because I believed protecting my daughter's marriage mattered more than being correct. I convinced myself that endurance was love. That afternoon, when Claire placed the hotel keys in my hand and told me not to make a scene, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I realized I had spent years cushioning the consequences of decisions that were not mine. The hotel room smelled of disinfectant and old carpet. It was the kind of place meant to be temporary, like I had just become in my own home. Around midnight, Claire texted me to return early the next day, but not to hang around because her in-laws might feel uncomfortable again. I read the message several times, looking for concern hidden between the lines. There was none. That was when I opened the folder I always carry in my suitcase. Inside were copies of financial guarantees I had signed years ago to help Benjamin secure his business credit. My name was attached to his stability. My reputation was quietly reinforcing his risk. I looked at the date on one of the bank notices. A review was approaching. My silence had been protecting more than feelings. It had been protecting his entire structure. I sat there for a long time, not crying, not shaking, just thinking. For years I had believed stepping back would keep peace in the family. But that night I understood something different. Peace that requires your disappearance is not peace. It is surrender. And at exactly 12 hours after they asked me to leave my own room, I made the first phone call. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply asked the bank what would happen if I withdrew my personal guarantee. The answer was calm and procedural, but it was enough, because sometimes collapse doesn't begin with chaos. It begins with one person deciding to stop holding the weight. The next morning, I withdrew my personal guarantee. The bank representative did not sound alarmed. He simply explained that once a guarantor steps back, the business undergoes reassessment. Credit lines can pause. Documentation must be resubmitted. Stability is measured again. He said something important. This process does not damage strong businesses. It only exposes weak ones. By midday, Benjamin felt it. A payment that should have cleared remained pending. A supplier requested confirmation before releasing materials. Accounting called twice within an hour. Nothing dramatic, just friction where there had always been flow. Benjamin blamed the bank first, then timing, then internal errors. His tone remained controlled, but urgency slipped through. Momentum had slowed, and his confidence depended on movement. Claire sensed something was wrong but didn't understand it yet. She asked me quietly if I had spoken to the bank. I told her yes. She stared at me as if trying to calculate consequences in real time. "Why?" she asked. "Because my name was on it," I replied. That answer unsettled her more than anger would have. By evening, the bank formally requested updated financial records. A review was opened. Certain credit extensions were temporarily restricted pending verification. Again, no accusations, just procedure. Inside the house, tension replaced arrogance. Evelyn stopped commenting on me. Richard stopped laughing. Benjamin began taking calls in private. It wasn't collapse, it was exposure, and exposure creates pressure. Late that night, Claire said I could ruin everything. I told her something simple. If the business depends on silence to survive, then silence was never stability. I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten. I did not accuse. I simply stopped reinforcing something that was not built correctly. The first crack had appeared, and everyone in that house felt it, even if they refused to name it. The house felt different. My daughter's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, maybe tonight's not a good night," she said. Just like that, no fight, no yelling. I realized then, you don't have to be hated to be pushed out. Being inconvenient is enough. I stared at the streetlights outside, letting it sink in. The world doesn't wait. I didn't hear any yelling, no slammed doors. Hell, they didn't even try to argue. My daughter, she just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking at me like I was background noise. "Pack your stuff," she said, cool as ice. "In-laws are coming. No room for you." I froze for a second, not because I was surprised, but because, damn, the world can shove you out without even a fight. No anger, no drama, just a polite eviction from your own home. And suddenly, 12 hours later, I'm standing on the curb with a duffel bag that holds half my life. Streetlights flickered above me like they were judging every move. Shadows stretched across the asphalt, morphing into shapes that didn't exist. Shapes of regret, shapes of the life I thought I had. My phone buzzed, a reminder that someone, somewhere, was living in their comfort while I was out here with nothing but a bag and a backpack full of old dreams. I thought about my daughter. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. Just neutral, like she'd been programmed to execute orders, and I got it. She wasn't being cruel. She was just convenient. I was inconvenient now. That was enough. And here's the kicker. The quiet wasn't comforting. It was loud. Every car that drove by sounded like a judge. Every distant laugh like a jury. And me? I'm walking past it all, wondering how easy it is to disappear from someone else's life without them blinking. By the time I hit the corner, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. Not really. I was aware. Every step felt deliberate, every breath heavy but intentional. I realized that life doesn't wait for your permission. And if you're not careful, it'll move on without you. The streets were empty, but alive in their own twisted way. Neon signs buzzed overhead, casting fractured lights on the cracked sidewalks. I kept walking, each step echoing in a rhythm I couldn't control. My bag felt heavier with every block, not because of the weight of clothes or books, but because of the weight of realization. People will push you out. Life will shove you around. And most of the time, it won't even be personal, just convenient. I passed a diner with flickering lights. A couple inside laughed, unaware of the story unfolding just outside their window. And I thought, that could have been me, could have been my life. But someone else decided I didn't fit their picture. And maybe that's fine. Maybe it's more than fine. It's a chance to rewrite the rules. I let the bag slide off my shoulder for a second, catching my breath, feeling the cold air slice through my hoodie. This was real. No comfort, no family waiting, just me, the asphalt, and the city humming around me. I started thinking, maybe freedom isn't flashy. Maybe it's not about yelling back or proving a point. Maybe freedom starts with walking away from the life someone else mapped out for you. Every street, every corner, every shadow becomes part of your path now. And you carry your past, sure, but only as fuel. By the time I found a bench under a flickering streetlight, I sat down and looked up. Stars? Nah, city glow drowned them out. But it didn't matter. I felt something else instead. Possibility, power, and yeah, a little fear. But that fear? That's just life reminding you you're alive. I looked back at the building I left behind, empty windows staring like eyes, and I smiled a little. Not because I won, not because I escaped, but because I knew one thing. Being inconvenient isn't the end, it's the start. And with that, I slung the bag back on my shoulder, took a deep breath, and walked into the night. Somewhere out there, the world was still moving, still judging, still living. And I was finally part of my own story again.